I think in a lot of respects, and this is just where I'm coming from, but I think a lot of people agree with this, is that your movie sometimes is only as good as the ending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, how many times have you seen a film that you really enjoyed, but for whatever reason that ending
Right.
kind of left you kind of like, oh, really? That was it?
Mm-hmm.
It could have been amazing. It could have been
Right.
like classic, but the ending just kind of left you flat. And I look back at movies that perfect films to me,
Mm-hmm.
and every one of these films I always felt had a perfect ending.
Right.
You go as far back as Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Jaws has a perfect ending.
Right.
It's so satisfying by the time
Right.
you smile, you son of a bitch, and he blows
Mm-hmm.
up. In case you didn't know, but that I thought, well, that's a perfect ending. Back to the Future once again. Perfect kind of ending. And I think a lot of times that maybe filmmakers don't take enough consideration with the ending. And speaking of Spielberg, I always felt that way with War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
War of the Worlds, I thought, was a 10-plus movie, all the way up until pretty much the very last 10 minutes of that movie.
It ran out of gas.
It just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, all right. I mean, it had none of the I mean, if you go to the original War of the Worlds back in the 50s, the George Powell version,
Yeah.
that ending was much more satisfying because, they were in the church. It looked like all was lost.
They were literally praying.
Praying, for some kind of a miracle, and all of a sudden it came to that heightened to where one more bomb or one more shot from those lasers and it was going to be over.
Done. Yeah.
And then they slowly start to crash, and you realize that they're dying from the virus. That
It was like there is a God.
yeah, exactly.
That's
right.
how the original ended.
And I just felt like if the remake could have done that, it could have been just as good. Definitely would have been even better, I think, than the original. But that's what I mean. Even someone as great as Spielberg, as far as directing, I think sometimes can forget that the ending is very important.
Well, you got to have good endings for good movies. Now, let me ask you, can you name some shows that stuck the landings, TV shows that stuck the landing?
Well, let's see. Game of Thrones. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, House of the Dragon did stick the landing, I thought.
Oh,
House of the Dragon?
House of the Dragon in the first season?
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Season 1.
The season finale or the series finale.
That's a good distinction. That's a good distinction. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think shows that goes on, it's almost like you almost have to wait until the series ended. I think The Penguin worked because as a limited series, then that's the end. And then so, yes, they definitely stuck the landing. But shows that went on, like, for example, Breaking Bad, stuck the landing.
Stuck the landing on that one.
Stuck the landing. When Breaking Bad at the time was airing live, I didn't watch it. I was watching another series, Dexter, which did not stick the landing.
Did not stick the landing.
Did not stick the landing whatsoever. Sopranos, would you say stuck the landing?
I mean, some people might think that it stuck the landing, I guess. I mean,
What do you
it was
think,
consistent.
Tony?
I
What do
mean, it
you
was
think?
consistent in the way that it kind of handled that whole drama. It didn't surprise me one bit. In fact, I kind of like chuckled when they had the ending of them just sitting at dinner and kind of like having a
Look up, fade to black.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, figures.
So you don't think that stuck the landing?
Well, I mean, for me, it's interesting. I don't know because, like I said in the last time, I liked The Sopranos, but I always thought that The Sopranos had a lot of, had a lot of air, had a lot of air in it. I mean, there was times when I would be like, "Oh, God damn, is this going somewhere? Is this happening?
Right,
I mean,
right.
what am I watching? The characters, of course, always kind of saved it because you're always kind of intrigued by what they were doing and their
Great
interaction
characters,
and stuff
great
like
acting,
that.
great
Exactly.
direction.
But I think that sometimes, as good as the characters can be, and I think the characters are the most important thing in any good story, I think you got to have a good plot too, in order to kind of equal that out. I think sometimes that if you find yourself without a plot at all, then it can kind of get a little bit
Right.
exhausting after a while.
I do think that sometimes, even if you have a good story and you got great characters, I think you have to have a vision of having a beginning, middle, and end. And I think you have to have that in the beginning before you start putting this thing together, because if you don't, even if you have a good story, you got good characters, maybe your story only goes for 2 to 3 seasons. But sometimes what happens, it becomes a hit. It becomes successful. And then when that happens, then they want to add more and more seasons.
They got to draw it out.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So then you get what they call bottle episodes, which is usually, well, we don't want to go to A to B and C right now. We want to kind of save C until season 2. And maybe we keep B all the way towards the end of the season. So we got to stretch out A, which then start focusing on maybe flashbacks with certain side characters and stuff like that. And they'll do it for the whole episode. And I think that's...
Miami Vice was infamous for that. And remember Miami Vice in the last 5th season or whatever, the very last season, they were doing a lot of that where sometimes it seemed like Don Johnson wasn't even showing up.
Well, by that time, he was already doing movies and some other supporting characters everybody was looking for the way out.
Right.
So they started doing on supporting characters that they never really touched on in the first 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So you already knew the air was out the door. But I think something like for example, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul worked extremely well because they always knew that there were going to be a 4 to 5 season show at best, and they knew that they weren't going to stretch it out. I think the reason too that why the Penguin worked was the pacing worked. That there were so many, every episode had a beginning, middle, and end. The same with the House of the Dragon. That it felt like a beginning, middle, and end every episode. So it makes you want to watch every episode because you're afraid that if I miss an episode, you're going to miss something major that's going to happen. That's a rarity. And unfortunately, it just seems like there's more TV shows and movies that may have a very strong setup, but very rarely do they stick the landing. Now, let me ask you, why do you think that is? Why do you think that even the good episodes or good TV shows or good movies can set you up so well, but then there is something about sticking the landing. Now, I'll look at two television shows a lot, like Seinfeld, for example. Everybody loved Seinfeld. Everybody hated that ending.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you get Curb Your Enthusiasm. Basically the same type of ending, except they put a little twist on it.
Well, they made fun of the fact that the Seinfeld ending was so bad.
Exactly. But yeah, that works.
Right.
So, and even with movies, like you mentioned, I've seen so many great films that could die on the ending, where you're sitting there like, oh, fuck. Or sometimes I might even see a mediocre movie or even a so-so TV show that might have a powerful ending, and then that's the impact that you get.
Well, it's interesting you say that because... perfect example is Heat.
Yes.
Michael Mann's Heat. Perfect. I still say that movie is probably one of the greatest crime films ever made.
Yes.
Regardless. Hands down.
I think Christopher Nolan would agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, hands down, one of the greatest, crime sagas ever. And I've seen that movie, I try to at least watch that movie once a year.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a great film.
It's just amazing, right? I have to say, though, and we've talked about this, I always felt like it would have been a stronger ending if they wouldn't have killed De Niro's character, if De Niro would have actually survived. I wanted that movie to end
with them chasing each other.
When he realized that he had to run and leave the girl behind, and he just took off. And I love that look on her face. So I was like, what,
yeah.
Huh? I mean, he just takes off. And then he grabs and then you got your Pacino grabbing the shotgun and chasing after him. And I just kind of wanted to see the crane go up.
Crane out
and the wide angle. And the music swells and it just fades out because
it was perfect.
I felt that was... I'm getting all metaphysical and shit, right? But I'm thinking, that it just symbolizes the good and bad in these two characters.
These guys are always going to be running because
it never ends.
Because at that moment, it didn't matter if he lived or died. It didn't matter because he had to live by the code that he,
and he gave up everything that meant anything to him anyway.
It's like you can't be attached to anything if you can't drop it, if you spot the heat around the corner in 30-second flat.
Yeah.
And that came back.
Yes.
And that moment was, if you ended, masterpiece of a movie.
Yeah.
the fact that it went on.
It'd be like a French ending, you know?
Oh, yeah. That it went on, it was like so.
Yeah.
And then there was I'll tell you another movie, and it's a Spielberg film, that if they would have ended it 20 minutes early, masterpiece. And that's Minority Report.
Oh, so right. So right. Minority Report went on way too long. There was a moment there that it was brilliant.
It was brilliant.
Mean, it was brilliant.
Spoilers for Minority Report.
Yeah. But when Cruz reads him the rights, because you think he's going to kill him. He's going to kill him. It's exactly what the what the precog said is going to happen. He's going to kill this guy.
Why would I ever kill a guy that I've never met?
Yeah, and you realize that when he gets there and he gets the guy and he realizes, this is the man. This is the one. You go,
Well, it's only because they set up the storyline of his son being kidnapped.
Kidnapped, exactly.
And missing. And so you knew that was his backstory, but never did you realize, and at the time, Cruz was in charge of the precog.
Yeah.
So the idea
that he would actually come across the guy who was responsible for that was never even in the idea of the movie, right?
Of the movie, yeah. That was just a backstory.
And then he gets there and he sees that, and you're going, oh my God, it comes all together.
And even he admitted that, I'm going to kill this guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that he confronts the guy, and the fact he has the gun, and then at that moment where we think he's going to actually kill this guy, and then the precog would have been right, he reads him his rights. He actually has choice over that.
And it's the most brilliant moment.
It was so emotional. It was so brilliant. And then the actor kept talking, and the character kept talking. You're like, no.
And you're in the audience going, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, man. Don't stop talking.
Yeah.
All right, let it in now, here. And I think though, the problem was, and I think that they were on this kick where they felt a need to have another twist.
Yeah.
And I think it was the second twist where your Max von Sydow character was the bad guy all along.
Yeah.
I felt that was what derailed that from being a perfect film, because it was like watching, it reminded me, because it is based on,
the short story.
The short story. Yeah.
Philip
K. Dick.
Right.
But it felt like a short story coming to life at that moment. It was like, oh, now it makes perfect sense.
If you end it when he read him the rights, and they disbanded.
And it would have brought all that together, because they had disbanded, because now it was obvious that, you do have free will.
Yes. And it's still the same ending, but a better, stronger ending and a more emotional ending.
Yes.
And but you're in trouble whenever you get one character talk to another character, and that's character's his superior. And first, if he says, "Does anybody else knows about this?"
Oh yeah, they completely did the L.A. Confidential ending.
You're dead.
Where Kevin Spacey gets whacked. Colin Farrell did the same exact line.
Well, those movies came like a few years apart from each other.
Yeah.
So the moment he says, "Does anybody else know about that?" No. Yes, everybody knows about it. Matter of fact, there's cops outside. Get your gun out on this guy. Yeah. But no, but you said something I think it's important, is that I do think that sometimes executive studios might have a really good, strong story, but they can convolute it. Because like you said, then you had a strong story and you could have just stuck with it, but then you feel like you're going to put a twist, even on top of a twist. Because it's almost like it's not enough.
I often wonder, was there a moment in the editing room where they were looking at it and they go, guys, we could end this right now. We could just,
They probably didn't.
You don't think so? I mean, you don't think there was a moment where Michael Mann was sitting there and going, we could just end it right here,
Michael Mann, definitely not.
Yeah.
Spielberg, no, only because they probably wanted to do that 20 act of, and then everybody just check out Minority Report, because I guarantee you that 20 minutes was the most cliche, run of the mill cop.
The bad guy monologue.
From the Fugitive.
Yeah.
It was like, so he's going to monologue in front of everybody and you're going to record it. It's like, I've seen that story.
Yeah.
Ended it with him reading the rights was the most emotional moment. And I think sometimes, even as writers, we recognize that when we write characters and we write stories, sometimes you might have a through line where you want to go, but then sometimes the story takes you someplace else unexpected that can be even much more emotional, have a much more emotional impact. And you got to trust it, and you got to just go that way. But I think too many times, too many films, too many projects, want to have the safe ending.
It's been a while since I've seen Minority Report, but they had the whole other story about the precog's mother dying or something like that.
Yeah, the subplot.
Yeah, the subplot of that. So
I would have just, to be fair, I would have just done it with the subplot.
Yeah.
Just keep it on the fact that the Cruz is now the person that's suspected of murdering this man before it happens, and he's trying to clear his name. He's trying to prove that no, there's no way I'm going to do it.
It would have been probably a much leaner movie, probably a 90-minute,
and as it should.
Yeah.